for 11 months, first contact between humanity and the Lyrenne Assembly had been, by every measure both species used to judge such things, an unqualified success. The Lyrenne had arrived first, their scout vessel emerging from a stable wormhole aperture at the edge of Earth's solar system with none of the fanfare or menace that centuries of human science fiction had trained the public to expect. They were a cautious, deeply diplomatic species, having spent 4,000 years building the Lyrenne Assembly through careful negotiation rather than conquest, and their approach to humanity reflected that same patient philosophy. Slow, respectful, methodical contact, built on transparency and a genuine desire to understand rather than dominate, Dr. Kavya Nair, humanity's chief diplomatic liaison to the Assembly delegation, had spent those 11 months building what she considered, without exaggeration, the most important professional relationship of her life, not with any single Lyrenne individual, but with an entire alien civilization learning alongside humanity, how two species with no shared history could build genuine trust from nothing. They've shared their entire star atlas with us, she told the assembled Unified Earth Council in her monthly briefing, standing before a room that had grown considerably more relaxed over the preceding months, as the initial anxiety of first contact gave way to cautious optimism. Trade agreements are in their final drafting stages. Cultural exchange programs have already sent 40 human researchers to Lyrenne space, and welcomed 60 Lyrenne scholars here on Earth. By any reasonable measure, this has been the best possible outcome any of us could have hoped for when that first scout ship arrived.
Ambassador Vas Keltara, the
Lyrenne Assembly's senior representative to Earth, had come to share Nair's optimism, developing over their months of close collaboration, something that both of them, in their more candid, private conversations, had begun to describe as genuine friendship, rather than mere professional partnership. Your species surprised us, Kelthara told Nair during one such conversation, in the observation lounge of the Lyrenne diplomatic vessel, Gentle Current, orbiting quietly alongside Earth's own modest collection of research and communication satellites. Our historical models predicted a young, technologically limited species would respond to first contact with fear, suspicion, perhaps even hostility. Instead, we found curiosity, openness, and a willingness to learn from us that exceeded anything in 4,000 years of assembly first contact precedent. We surprised ourselves too, honestly, Nair admitted. Humanity doesn't have the best track record of trusting people who look different from us, let alone an entirely different species. I think part of it is that you never gave us a reason not to trust you. You've been exactly what you said you'd be, every step of the way. Neither of them, in that quiet, hopeful moment, had any idea how quickly and how completely that fragile trust was about to be tested. The Meridian's Vigil had been in orbit around Earth for the entire 11 months of Lyrenne contact, completely undetected by even the Assembly's considerably advanced sensor technology, precisely as its designers had intended. It was, by a significant margin, the most advanced vessel humanity had ever constructed. A deep black Dreadnought, built under a classification so restricted that fewer than 200 people across the entire planet knew of its existence, developed over 15 years by a joint military and scientific initiative born from a single, sobering realization that had shaped Earth's defense policy since the earliest days of serious interstellar ambition. That any first contact, however peaceful it appeared, might eventually reveal a threat humanity would have no time to prepare for, if it waited until that threat was already visible. Admiral Theodore Vance, who had overseen the Meridian's Vigil's construction, and now commanded it, from a position of complete operational secrecy, had watched the Lyrenne contact unfold with the same cautious optimism as the rest of Earth's leadership. But also with the particular vigilance of someone whose entire career had been built around preparing for the scenario nobody else wanted to seriously consider. 11 months of peaceful contact doesn't mean 11 months is representative of the next 11 years. He told his skeleton crew during one of their rare full briefings, held in the Dreadnought's cavernous, permanently stealth-shrouded command deck. Our orders remain unchanged, we stay hidden, we stay ready, and we hope to every god humanity has ever believed in, that we never need to reveal ourselves at all. That hope held for 11 months. It broke on the 12th. The crisis began not with the Lyrenne Assembly at all, but with the sudden, unexpected arrival of a second alien vessel. One that emerged from the same wormhole aperture the Lyrenne had originally used, broadcasting nothing, responding to no hailing attempts, and immediately beginning an aggressive scan of Earth's orbital infrastructure, that every human sensor operator monitoring the event recognized, with mounting dread, as unmistakably hostile in character. Unknown vessel, designation unclear, currently 300,000 kilometers from Earth orbit and closing. Reported the watch officer at Earth's primary defense monitoring station, her voice tight with barely controlled alarm. It's not responding to any hailing frequency, human or Lyrenne. Scanning patterns are consistent with military reconnaissance, not diplomatic contact. Ambassador Kelthara's response, transmitted within minutes of the vessel's arrival, carried an urgency that shattered the careful diplomatic calm of the preceding 11 months entirely. Dr. Nair. That vessel belongs to the Threk Combine, Kelthara said, and for the first time since Nair had known her, the Lyrenne ambassador's carefully composed voice carried something unmistakably close to fear. We had hoped, given the isolation of this system, that they would not locate your world for years, perhaps decades. The Combine does not conduct diplomatic first contact. They conduct assessment, followed by conquest, and they have never once in recorded assembly history reversed that pattern for any species they have found. How much time do we have? Nair asked, already moving toward the Unified Earth Council's emergency command channel. Days, perhaps hours, Kelthara said. The Combine's reconnaissance vessels report directly back to their main battle fleets. Once they've confirmed your world's viability as a conquest target, that fleet will not be far behind. What followed was, by every account later documented in Earth's official history of the crisis, the single most consequential 72 hours in humanity's short history among the stars. Earth's unified council, faced with a threat its conventional military forces had no realistic capacity to counter, found itself confronting an agonizing decision that Admiral Vance had, in truth, spent 15 years quietly, preparing to force upon exactly this kind of desperate moment, whether to finally reveal the existence of the Meridian's Vigil, ending 15 years of absolute secrecy in the hope that a single vessel, however advanced, might be enough to change the calculus of a coming invasion that every available intelligence assessment suggested Earth could not otherwise survive. If we reveal the Vigil, and it's not enough, we've told every hostile power in this sector exactly what our best weapon looks like. For nothing, argued Councilman Diego Alvarez, voicing the concern that had dominated the Council's emergency session for the better part of 6 hours. If we don't reveal it, and the Combine fleet arrives to find us defenseless, we may lose everything anyway, and lose the element of surprise that ship represents for whatever fight comes after this one. It was Dr. Nair, drawing on 11 months, spent building the most valuable relationship humanity had ever developed with another species, who ultimately tipped the Council's decision. Ambassador Kelthara has been honest with us about everything, including a threat that could have easily destroyed her own credibility with us if she'd chosen to hide it. Nair said. The Lyrenne Assembly has resources and knowledge about the Combine that we desperately need right now, and the only way we get that help in time is if we trust the relationship we've spent 11 months building. I think the Vigil needs to reveal itself not just as a weapon, but as proof to the Lyrenne that we're serious about defending this alliance abyss, not just receiving its benefits. The Council's authorization came 4 hours later, and Admiral Vance, ending 15 years of absolute operational secrecy in a single transmission, ordered Meridian's Vigil to break stealth. The reveal, when it came, produced exactly the reaction Vance had spent years quietly dreading. Not relief, but fear. Not from the approaching Threk reconnaissance vessel, which immediately altered course, and began transmitting frantic, encrypted signals, back toward its home fleet, but from the Lyrenne Assembly itself. You have concealed a vessel of this scale and sophistication from us, for the entirety of our contact. Ambassador Kelthara said, her voice carrying a coldness Nair had never once heard from her in 11 months of close collaboration, as assembly sensor readings of the Meridian's Vigil's full capabilities reached Lyrenne Command. We have shared our Star Atlas, our technology, our complete diplomatic transparency with your species, while you maintained a weapon capable of rivaling our own most advanced military assets, hidden from every sensor sweep we conducted throughout this entire relationship. The trust that 11 months of careful, patient diplomacy had built teetered, in that single moment, on the edge of complete collapse, and Nair understood, with sudden and painful clarity, that the coming days would determine not merely whether Earth survived the Threk Combine's approaching fleet, but whether it would face that threat, alongside an ally, or utterly alone, having shattered the one relationship that had made survival seem possible in the first place. Ambassador, Nair said, choosing her words with the full weight of everything she understood was now at stake, I won't pretend the Vigil's existence isn't a legitimate breach of the trust we've built. It is. But I'd ask you to consider why we built it in the first place, and why we chose, in the middle of the most dangerous crisis either of our species has faced since we met, to reveal it rather than keep it hidden. We built the Vigil because we were afraid, the same way any young species reasonably would be, of a first contact eventually turning into exactly the threat we're now facing. And we revealed it, when it mattered most, because we decided that surviving this crisis alongside you mattered more than protecting a secret we'd hoped to never need. Kelthara's response took a long, agonizing pause to arrive. The Assembly's own history includes similar precautions, Dr. Nair, she finally said, some of the coldness receding from her voice. We simply never expected to find ourselves on the receiving end of one. Perhaps that says more about our own assumptions than it does about your honesty in this moment. The Threk Combine's main battle fleet arrived 6 days later, having received their reconnaissance vessel's frantic report, and, crucially, an additional piece of intelligence its commanders had not anticipated. A joint human Lyrenne defense force, combining Earth's revealed Dreadnought with the full military weight of assembly reinforcements that Kelthara had, despite her private misgivings about the Vigil's concealment, chosen to request on humanity's behalf regardless. The battle that followed was brief and, by the standards of a species like the Threk Combine, accustomed to overwhelming and unprepared opponents, entirely unexpected in its outcome, facing a defense far more sophisticated and better coordinated than their reconnaissance assessment had predicted. The Combine fleet withdrew after heavy losses, marking Earth's solar system as a target too costly to pursue for the foreseeable future. In the aftermath, the relationship between humanity and the Lyrenne Assembly did not return, immediately or entirely, to the easy trust of those first 11 months. But it survived, transformed into something more honest, and ultimately more durable, than the careful diplomatic optimism that had preceded the crisis. We learned something about each other this week that 11 months of pleasant negotiations never would have revealed. Ambassador Kelthara told Dr. Nair, in a conversation held weeks after the Threk fleet's withdrawal, aboard a Lyrenne vessel now formally, permanently allied with Earth's own defense forces. Trust that has never been tested is not the same as trust that has survived being broken and rebuilt. I believe, Dr. Nair, that what exists between our species now is stronger for having been tested this badly, this early. Dr. Nair, looking out at a peaceful Earth orbit that had, just weeks earlier, come closer to catastrophe than almost anyone beyond the Unified Council's inner circle would ever fully know, found herself agreeing completely. First contact was supposed to be the hardest part, she said. I think we just learned it was only the beginning of learning how to actually trust each other. And I think, for the first time since that first scout ship arrived, I finally believe we're going to be all right. In the years that followed, historians on both sides of the alliance would return again and again to those 72 hours as the true founding moment of the human-Lyrenne partnership. Not the quiet optimism of the first 11 months, but the far messier, far more honest week when both species discovered exactly what the other was willing to risk, and exactly what the other was willing to forgive, when survival hung in the balance. Admiral Vance, never entirely comfortable stepping out of the shadows,
the meridians of Vigil,
had spent 15 years occupying, would later say that the ship's greatest achievement wasn't the battle it helped win, but the alliance it very nearly broke and ultimately helped forge into something far sturdier than careful diplomacy alone could ever have built. The Meridian's Vigil remained in active service for decades afterward. No longer hidden, no longer secret, but standing openly alongside Lyrenne vessels as the first, imperfect proof that trust between two species didn't require the absence of fear or mistakes. Only the willingness, when it mattered most, to choose honesty over the comfort of an old and lonely secret.